Hello and welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I am your host, Mr. J.R. Everhart, the Grumpster himself. This week we are going to probably make a bunch of you mad. We're going to talk about the Chinese invasion into pro audio. We're going to talk about disposable gear, how most modern gear, digital mixers and powered speakers and things like that are mostly disposable. We're going to tell you why that's the case. And we're going to dig deep into this whole subject of, what is better, old school, new school, what are the differences between those things? We're going to dive in. I'm going to give you a little history lesson here today, boys and girls. And we're going to dig into this super, super deep. So stick around. You do not want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, JR here. I wanted to talk to you for a quick second. If I could just have your attention for like 90 seconds, please. Can you please consider subscribing to the channel? Like 47% of you guys watching right now have not even hit the subscription button and the notification bell so that you can follow this content. And many of you are coming back week after week. Hey, look, it's okay. I do the same thing sometimes. Sometimes I am so into what a channel is posting that I forget, hey, I need to support them with my subscription. So I will hit that subscription thing. Also, if you really super dig what I'm doing here with the Grumpy Sound Guy content, please think about becoming a paid member and becoming one of the Grumpy Sound Guy Insiders. We have a wonderful group of industry professionals over there now that are answering questions and helping people get from A to B, giving recommendations on gear. I myself am in all those conversations. When I know you're an insider, I give you preferential treatment, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely worth the price of a cup of coffee fee that it is every month to just get in there and become part of a group of guys that respectfully know how to communicate with the guys that really just need to ask some elementary level questions, I always say it's a safe place to ask dumb questions. Look, I don't know everything. Sometimes I'll get on there and post something like, hey, what do you guys know about this? What do you guys know about that? It's so different from the forums where you're ridiculed and made fun of many times. I do not tolerate that with the Grumpy Insiders. These guys are really just there trying to connect, trying to have community, and to try to do the right thing and helping everybody get to where they need to be in the business. I love you guys. Stick around for the rest of the content. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So I like to build these conversations on a firm foundation. If you're someone who's under 35, maybe even 40 years old, then you really, really need to watch this video to the end, okay? Because I'm going to tell you things you probably don't know, okay? I don't mean that from an arrogant standpoint or anything like that. I value the young guys and the up-and-comers and the guys that, are under 35. I have no issue with them whatsoever. But there's a world that those of us over 40, lived in that you did not get to experience. And that was really a disservice to you. It's not your fault. You can't help when you were born. But what you can do is you can educate yourself in exactly what life was like before everything went digital, and to give you a foundation by which you can build your digital lifestyle on moving forward. That's really the synopsis of what we're trying to get to here today. So again, if you're under 35, 40 years old, you're going to really find some juicy stuff here today. So let me take you back to about, I don't know, like 1988 to, I'll say 94, in that time frame, maybe 86 to 94, we'll give it, that sort of time frame. Obviously everything was analog. The middle market guy was probably using PV or Yamaha. There was some Yorkville stuff floating around in those days as well. Some of the bigger analog companies that were making point source speakers were obviously EAW with the KF line. EV was a completely different company back then than what they are now. All these companies I'm mentioning are completely different companies back then than what they are now. And I'm going to tell you why if you hang out. But the middle market guy, excuse me, was really trying to just make the best with the money he had. Budgets really weren't as good or even to where we are now. I mean, we haven't made that much more money since the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, some prices have went up in certain places, especially for festival level stuff. And I'm talking middle market. I'm not talking pro touring. I'm talking middle market. The average guy who's doing, stuff at his local park, his city park for the community, municipality kind of work. Maybe the county fair. He's doing club level stuff. Maybe he's doing house of worship stuff, that sort of thing. Really just up the middle of the road, kind of lifestyle. And they were probably using like a Soundcraft B series console if they were lucky. Most guys were running around mixing on PV consoles in those days. Carvin was super huge in those days. Pumping out analog consoles and that sort of thing. And as most of you know, we were carrying big outboard racks for effects, gates, compressors, outboard EQs, all that kind of stuff. I think that's pretty common knowledge. But here's the thing that is so hard to put into words and to explain, and that is how everything sounded. Because and we've kind of been dumbed down in 2025 here with everything. How we listen to music. Streaming music doesn't sound near as good as what it did when it was in cassette form or even vinyl. Vinyl guys will argue you to the next millennial about how vinyl is the ultimate experience for music. So we've kind of been fed our poison slowly, and we've been kind of dumbed down, under the umbrella of convenience. CDs would last forever, cassette tapes would wear out. And then we went to MP3s. Now you can get 1 million songs on a device the size of a credit card. That was super convenient. Now everything is kind of streaming where you don't even need an extra device. Your phone can stream all that stuff, and your phone is basically a hybrid of our human existence now. It's your personal computer, it's your cell phone, obviously. Texting is a whole different thing. It's handling all your email, your private messaging on the social media sites. And it's a media player, for those of us in the audio business. We have apps on our phones that give us RTA readings, sound level readings. I mean, we've just it's been nice to have all those things in the phone. Okay. I'm not anti-technology by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just trying to show you the slow linear trajectory of how things have changed. And through that change and through the wonders of convenience, because look, no one likes, carrying around a 47-pound, speaker box over a 96-pound speaker box more than me, okay? I have 2 discs gone in my lower back, and I think I got a third one acting up right now as we speak. I am sitting here in back pain. That's kind of par for the course in the production business. But believe me, I understand the selling points of convenience. A lot of what we see today has really been driven by the demand for low prices and convenience. Obviously, feature set is a huge deal. We want as many features as we can get, try to get the most bang for our buck. The sad thing is the sacrifice has been sound quality and durability. So let's go back to our original story here. We're in 1989 and wearing fluorescent orange, and the girls were in spandex and leg warmers and all the things, We were kind of spoiled, man, because analog gear, just by the nature of how it was built, especially analog consoles, really just gave you a natural, warm, fat mix right out of the box. You didn't have to create that like you do nowadays. You know, it was just part of the equipment. The better quality console you had, the more of that was present. You know, so even on like say some of the budget consoles like the Carvins and the PVs and stuff like that or whatever, they still had some of that going on. It still wasn't horrible. A lot of the Allen and Heath, like the GL line, was super huge in those days. The last analog console I worked on was a GL 2400, which was ironically made in China. But we're going to talk about the differences in manufacturing in China during that era and manufacturing in China during this era, because those are radically different. So you got to this world where it was a lot of work. You know, guys were always much more motivated to become part of what you were doing. So it wasn't near as hard to get staff for shows. Many times you could get, you know, young guys that were just chomping at the bit just to be part of the conversation. You know, just to get out here. They would work for free or they'd work for free beer. My first gig in this business was $20 a night and all the food and beer, draft beer that I could drink wherever we were at. You know, that's kind of how it worked. And I was happy to do it. You know why? Because I was able to rub shoulders with and learn the business from guys who were already established in the business and moving down the railroad track. You know what I'm saying? They were already getting it done. They were doing what I wanted to do. I wanted to be where they were someday. You know, so I seen the value in working for peanuts because I was learning things hands on, and I was very fortunate to learn it from some of the best engineers that ever graced the Mid-Atlantic. You know, I'm very thankful for that. I'm very grateful for that. That's very challenging nowadays. Nowadays, either one of two things are happening with younger guys. Either they go to school and then come out of school 18 months to 4 years later with some sort of certificate or bachelor's degree in recorded sciences or whatever, and think that that's going to be their automatic ticket into some romantic white glove job where all they do is walk in, mix front of house, and get back on the bus, and you know, groupies are licking their toes, and you know, feeding them grapes, and that's it. Like, there could be nothing further from the truth than that, you know, honestly. Even the guys that I know that have been in the business for 3 or 4 decades that have that kind of pull aren't living that life, you know. They're walking in, mixing, and walking out, but it's still the road and it's still beating their rear end just as much as it is the rest of us. But I digress. And then the other is guys that actually see value in the business and want to come and intern for a while to learn the business. But the problem is they have no patience. You know, they don't want to wait for the knowledge to come to them. They don't want to earn their way up the ladder. And they just kind of want they want to be behind the console within the first month or two, you know, mixing. And, you know, the reality of that is most middle market production companies like myself are not in need of guys who can mix. We're in need of guys who can do everything else. We're in need of guys who can drive trucks, can load and unload trucks. And that sounds like a really dumb, easy thing, but it really isn't. You know, you need to be really good at Tetris, and you need to know how to safely secure equipment in a truck and that sort of stuff. It's not as straightforward as what you may think it is when you're hauling big systems around to do like street festivals, you know, and that sort of thing. Setting up and tearing down, deploying mobile staging is a whole nother thing, you know, that requires someone with their head on their shoulders, or else someone's going to get killed. You know, I mean, you're flying stuff over people's heads, and you know, that sort of thing. You need people who are sober. I've had some pushback on guys that want to smoke marijuana. They're like, well, dude, it's legal now, and in Maryland it is legal. Recreational use is legal in Maryland, but so is drinking. And I wouldn't hire an alcoholic any more than I would hire someone who doesn't know how to be in the moment and present and sober. Because when something goes wrong, that's when all hell breaks loose. And that's where the accountability thing is going to really kick you in the rear end. So I'm saying all that to build up to this idea of the Chinese invasion. Somewhere around the middle 90s is when I started to see it happen. Companies were selling out to big corporate entities. I'm talking about companies who were traditionally family started, owned, operated. They handmade stuff, or they had a production factory where they were there every day, making sure quality control was where it was supposed to be, and that sort of thing. Some things were manufactured in China and then assembled here in the United States or in the UK or something like that. Germany, France, Spain, Italy, those are other countries that were kind of doing the same thing. So the difference was those guys not only had people at their U.S. factories, but they had people at the Chinese factories, standing over their shoulder, putting accountability in its proper place, and making sure things were made to a certain degree, to a certain level. The other thing was that early Chinese stuff, if it broke, there were parts available to fix it. It wasn't that big a deal. Repair techs, did pretty well in this business, especially if you were plugged in with a couple pro touring companies or, bigger middle market production houses that were doing, 200, 300 shows a year. If you use stuff, it will eventually break. Nothing lasts forever. Some stuff can last a long, long time, but nothing lasts forever. So, you could go to your local JBL rep or your EV rep or to an electronics repair shop, which I can't even remember the last time that I was at an electronics repair shop where they could actually fix everything that's coming in the door. That's not the case anymore, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. So if something broke, you could go to your repair shop, man, get it fixed, and it's all good, and you just kind of put it back on the road and go at it. There was still some quality in control of the manufacturing process. As we got through the middle to late 90s, past Y2K, the year 2000, and really started into the 2000s, big corporate entities had bought so many of these companies. JBL ended up selling out, became Harman, became something else. I can remember when Ampeg, moved all their manufacturing to China, they had, I think it was the SVT4 head or something that just would burst into flames, like literally. They were having problems with it catching on fire. You bass players can correct me on that model or whatever, but my bass player seen it with his own eyes and has accounted for it more than once. So, it's just, things kind of went south, man, and those corporate entities are all about the bottom line. And the bottom line is how much can we, it's about optimizing maximum profit. So how much can we make with the least amount of labor and manufacturing costs? Well, I think we all know that China and Mexico and some of these, foreign entities are the place to get that cheap labor, I see a documentary several years ago, probably 10 years ago now, about Walmart and how Walmart owns 5 big city blocks in China, and that's where they make everything. And, people were working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week or something like that for a couple bucks or something. Like, it was ridiculous, the amount of money that they were working for. And that's just kind of the culture. China's a communist country, so it kind of is what it is, and I'm not trying to get into a political thing. It's just what it is, So the problem with that was these corporate entities didn't have the love and passion that like the original EAW engineers had, the original JBL engineers, EV, Electrovoice. They kind of just took that brand and stamped it on whatever newest, latest, greatest, cheaply made console or box would come out of Chinese manufacturing. Mr. Behringer himself learned this the hard way, because when he first got Behringer, up and going, its big claim to fame. I was working in pro audio retail at the time, and the running joke was you can buy anything with the Behringer name on it for about $100. The problem was it came back in the door as quick as it went out. And Mr. Behringer himself had said in an interview that I've seen several years ago that he almost went bankrupt trying to run his business over a fax machine, or over email, that sort of thing. So what ended up having to happen was he created Music Tribe and bought out Midas, and then some of the Midas engineers kind of went to China and they sort of kind of got things on track. The problem is I don't see consistent quality control happening through this manufacturing process. And then what we've sacrificed is sonic reproduction, and we've sacrificed durability. Talk to any repair tech and they will tell you that you may or may not even be able to get parts for whatever it is that you need fixed. Just this week, I've had 2 or 3 different followers tell me of catastrophic plate amplifier failures across 3 or 4 different brands: JBL, QSC, Turbo Sound, Behringer boxes, because Behringer makes speakers as well as the X32. I think we've all come to realize that the X32 is a disposable console. When it starts breaking down, throw it away, buy another one. But, you're paying $1,600 for a 32-channel console. Back in 1990, that we would have had our minds completely blown. I remember the GL 2400 was $2,400. I remember that because it was the model number and the price was the same. And that was for a 24 by 4, I think it was. I don't think it was an 8-bus console. I can't remember, honestly. It goes back too far. But 24-channel analog console, that was just for the console. That doesn't include all the outboard gear that you get built into modern mixers. 4-band graphic EQs, third octave EQs, compression effects, multi-engine effects. Most, even these small rack mixers have 4 channels of effects. That would have been 4 different units in an outboard rack, 31-band EQs. Every 31-band EQ you see in your digital mixer would have been an outboard 31-band EQ that had to be hardwired into the system every single show. So when Behringer came along with the X32 and you could get all that, when it first came out, it was the same price as a GL 2400. The price has since come down. But, their whole claim to fame was giving you the most bang for your buck. What we didn't realize, and all of us went for it, you know what I'm saying? Like most people were either on PreSonus or X32s. And the X32, even though it was problematic right out of the gate, they got some of that settled later. But the first gen definitely had some issues. It was still less problematic than the Studio Live PreSonus stuff. And at that stage of the game, there wasn't a whole lot of other stuff on the market. I think Yamaha had the 01 going on at that in those years, but it wasn't user friendly, and a normal middle market guy was not going to really dive into that console unless they were a Yamaha, diehard Yamaha guy or whatever. Like I'm a huge fan of Yamaha gear, not necessarily a huge fan of Yamaha mixers, even though I know they're great. The heritage is phenomenal, all that kind of stuff. I haven't mixed on the DM stuff yet because that's pretty new to my ecosystem. I will eventually get around on one of those and be able to tell you what that's like, but I was not a fan of the LS9 or any of that stuff because it was just, you had to dig through layers and layers and layers of stuff to work on them. But I know guys that preferred those over anything else, so it's whatever you get used to. The point is, we thought we were getting so much value, so much bang for our buck, and Mr. Behringer was a genius in putting out a digital console most middle market guys could afford. And it was so economical, it would really kind of extinguish their fears of moving to digital because they were afraid they didn't know how to run the thing, They did a really good job of putting tutors up on YouTube, and guys just started digging in, and now it's an industry standard. I think most people are leaning toward the M32 nowadays because it just has a better build, but it's really old technology. But I see tons of them everywhere I go. Like, it is the house sound console that most guys go with because it's just a workhorse and it kind of gets it done. The M32 is everywhere. I see a lot of X32s in the churches, because it's $1,600, $1,700, man. You can get into it. I bought an X32 rack last year, and this is going to kind of transition us into the part of the conversation where we're talking about durability. I bought an X32 rack this time last year when Behringer lowered the prices on all the X level stuff. I have 4 or 5 M32 setups. I have, right there underneath those boxes right behind me is an M32 Live. And then I have 3 or 4 of the M32C DL32 Wi-Fi setups. But I was like, man, for 900 bucks, sure, no problem. So I bought one. I threw it in my rehearsal studio. I don't get to play music near as much as what I would like to. I'm a drummer, and we're currently putting together a really cool classic rock band. But I bet I haven't used the thing 5 or 6 times. And then we were at rehearsal last Tuesday night, and we just lost all audio. Like, for whatever reason, it just locked up. I had to stop rehearsal, pull my ears out, get out from behind the kit, and go reboot the system, and then it all came back. But that's a unit that I have 6 usages of, and I'm not talking like 6 shows. I'm talking like 6 rehearsals, maybe 4 rehearsals, something like that, where we're all in ears. We're not running the thing hard. No drums have ever been run through that mixer because we just don't do that at rehearsal. Basically just the guitars, bass, and vocals. And the thing is acting like a fool. I had to call my Sweetwater rep last Friday and say, hey, dude, is there anything we can do about this? I mean, I haven't hardly even used this thing. It's already breaking down on me. Well, unfortunately, we're seeing more and more of that. Now, I know there's going to be guys that are going to try to roast me in the comments about, well, I've had an X32 for 20 years. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened. God bless you, man. I'm happy for you. I'm not saying it's not possible. Even a blind squirrel can find a nut every now and then. You know what I mean? Like, and especially when we get talking about, plastic plate amplifier, point source speakers. Man, guys really get territorial about all that kind of stuff. And they think that I'm trying to talk down to them because they've bought that gear. And I'm not. What I'm saying is, most of you guys were not alive to remember how good point source used to be. Wooden boxes, quality drivers, RCF drivers, B&C drivers, JBL made their own drivers. Quality, hand craftsmanship. There was a human being who put their hands on that driver and loved it, and that's kind of what they did. It's not like that now. Now everything's just mass produced and kicked out, and it's whatever it is. They throw some specs together, which most of the specs nowadays are complete bold-faced lies. It just is. So you guys that come at me, I am on your side. What I am trying to do is create some kind of revival of just good quality middle market gear. I was just at a show a couple nights ago on a JBL SRX 910 line array rig. They have 6 boxes per side. They have JBL SRX 828 subs. I think they have 6 of them in the room. And the system sounds okay. It's going to do whatever they need it to do. And because it's in a controlled environment, it's not going to be out in the sun baking somewhere, they'll probably get a lot of life out of that rig. How did I think it sounded? I've heard probably at least 5 or 6 shows on that rig now. And I don't think it sounds very good. It's okay. The average person isn't going to complain about it. And that's kind of where we've become. That's who we've become. That's where we are now, is that, if it gets the job done and no one's complaining about it, the hell with how good it could be. Let's just be happy with what it is. Look, and I know there's some value there, especially those of us that are on tight budgets, and stuff like that. And we all know the production budgets have been a mess, and everything. But my heart just aches, man. It aches for guys that go out and buy, plastic box. I call them Tupperware boxes because they're made out of plastic. They buy these Tupperware boxes with plate amplifiers on the back of them. Sometimes they're paying $3,500 a box. Like, that's insane. So you got 25 grand wrapped up in your plastic line array? And I can give you the phone number to a guy right now, 2 guys actually, that bought RCF Tupperware line arrays. And they've both had, one has had catastrophic failure, and the other one is now slowly starting to lose boxes. Neither one of those guys, the one guy had the stuff like 2 or 3 gigs and it already started falling apart. The other guys had it for about a season and the boxes are starting to, he's talking about buying a bigger rig. I'm like, dude, you just spent 20 grand on this rig. And now you're already talking about spending another, well, you want to get a bigger array next time? Now you're going to spend 30 grand, 35 grand? Am I the only guy that thinks that's insane? I mean, really. I just bought some Yamaha DZR 15s for my club level stuff, the smaller stuff. I love them. They're light. I've been able to get rid of my 150-pound amp rack because of those. I'm carrying just like 1 amp for subs because I'm still running passive subs. But I'm a sucker for the convenience and the ease of use is the next guy. They're plywood boxes. I can't recommend them enough. But does it sound as good as an EAW KF rig or even a JF rig? Even SRX 700, QRX EV stuff, it might be pretty close to the SRX 700 and QRX EV, but it's not even in the same neighborhood as some of the older Meyer stuff, some of the older Clare Brothers stuff. The KF, EAW stuff was just iconic stuff. Like if you went to a concert in the 80s, you probably sat underneath of a KF 850 rig because that's kind of what ruled the roost. I own one. I have a double stack KF 850 rig with SB 850Z subs. And that rig just kills, murders, and it's 30 years old. But, the boxes weigh 240 pounds. They're on casters, so, I mean, we're not having to lift them. We would never lift them upstairs or anything like that. And we can fly them when we take them out, I will occasionally ground stack them. It takes 3 guys to ground stack them, but, excuse me, you're only ground stacking 4 boxes. So it's not like you're ground stacking, 13 boxes or some kind of crazy stuff like that. But I'm kind of in a mode now to where I have a mobile stage and we can just fly them on the stage and then we never have to lift the things. And they just sound amazing. And then the plastic box line array guys, which most of y'all don't even understand what a line source is. You're not getting real line source audio until you have at least 8 or 12 boxes up on each side, If you're throwing 2 boxes up per side, you're really just buying the stuff to be able to say you own a line array. If you got 2 boxes per side on sticks or 3 boxes per side on sticks, you basically have a point source rig. It's just turned sideways, and don't get mad at me. It's just the truth. It's the facts. Look it up, okay? But then you guys, all you want to talk about is coverage. Well, I got 100 degrees of coverage with this rig. Okay, well, these new DZRs have 90 degrees. I mean, that's a real close second. And they were a fraction of the cost. They were like, I don't know, $1,200, $1,300 a box, not $2,800 a box. You know what I'm saying? And I only need 2 of them to cover most of the club rooms that I work in. Any of the bigger club rooms usually have installed systems, and I'm usually mixing racks and stacks on somebody else's rig, So we just don't, you guys that are, under 40, under 35 years old, we're not attacking you, okay? We're not saying that your opinion isn't valid. We're saying that your opinion is based on resources that are radically different than the resources our opinions are based on, because you weren't alive to experience that. If you've never mixed on a KF 850 rig, you really have no idea just how good point source can be. If you've never mixed on a Danley rig, because Danley is the only company that's really carrying forward all the principles and all this point source gospel you hear me preaching on this channel all the time. They're the only ones doing it. So then the other conversation is, well, I get way more throw out of my Tupperware line array rig than what you will out of your KF 850 rig. Maybe not. Danley's throwing 1,000 feet in stadiums with their point source stuff. Again, don't get mad at me. I didn't make this stuff up. It's a fact. Go Google it. You can see their Jericho series is ridiculous. Ridiculous. I would own one if I could afford it. But they're also ridiculously expensive. But, and they're like, well, man, them boxes have like 18 drivers in them or whatever. Okay, would you ever count how many drivers is in a 6-box per side line array? Most 3-way boxes have what? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drivers per box. And then 8 times 6, Danley just shoves them all in one box. Yeah, it's a big honking cabinet, but again, if you're flying it and it's on casters and you don't have to lift the thing, it's not the end of the world. And those Jericho boxes will keep up with any middle market line array on the planet. Probably smoke it, any day of the week, honestly. And I mean, they've done venues like Red Rocks, and stuff. I mean, they've done huge pro touring venues with their rigs and just sound like $1,000,000. And in that scenario, you're not sacrificing the low mid, which is what I think most of these Tupperware boxes miss, is the low mid. The reason why all these middle of the road plastic box companies are still making wooden subs is because they know deep down that wood is where it's at. The one common denominator that I hear, and I have heard most of the middle market plastic line array boxes and point source boxes, most, not all, most, they all have one thing in common. They tend to be very tinny on the high end, harsh in the mid, and anemic in the low mid. So then you're kind of left with something that sounds like a glorified transistor radio. Of course, some of you guys don't even know what a transistor radio is, but a small little one speaker, radio. Or think about it in terms of like a Bluetooth speaker. In fact, some Bluetooth speakers probably sound better than some of these plastic boxes, because they usually got a lot of bottom end and stuff in them. The Bluetooth speakers do. But you know what I'm trying to say. So we've been dumbed down and fed our poison slowly under the umbrella of ease of use and cost, and then a perceived feature set. A lot of these guys are throwing, like these DZRs they got 96K DSP processing built into them. And I'm standing there like, why? I would have much rather saved, $200 or $300 off the price of the speakers, and you just gave me an amp with a volume knob on it, than to have all that stuff in there, because I don't use any of it. But they have to build all that in there because nowadays we have engineers who don't know how to tune a system without that. They need all those presets to be able to get their system where they want it to be, because they don't have the skill set that guys like me developed during the analog days, and how to tune a rig correctly, how to set up a system processor. And I'm not just talking about like a drive rack PA, I'm talking about like a real system processor where you're doing time alignment on some drivers and different placements. I mean, like, or just be able to hear frequency. That has really become a lost art in the middle market with a lot of the younger guys, is they just can't hear frequency because they mix with their eyes instead of their ears. And I know some of that takes time. I always say it takes at least 10 or 12 years of full-time work in this business to really get your ears trained to be able to hear frequency correctly, understand things like compression, and things like that. Understand room acoustics, understand system, design and deployment, all that kind of stuff. So the opinions I'm bringing to the table is based on what most of you would call an old school mix philosophy. But if you would have been alive during those years, you would know why we're still sticking to our guns, because it sounded so much better. Everything was so fat. There's so many shows that I'm standing out in the audience and I'm like, it just feels sterile and thin. Even if there's a gut-wrenching low end going on, because that seems to be what most guys feel validated by. Number one, they can say they have a line array, even if it's 3-4-inch drivers in a box sideways. They are a line array company now. I can't tell you how much of that I deal with. And then it's so frustrating because they feel like their race to the base is what validates them. Like, are we the loudest guy in the block? Is the kick drum making you want to poop your pants? If we can do those two things, then we're validated. That, not in my world. I mean, I like a nice fat bottom end. Trust me, you can ask any of my clients, they'll tell you that there will never not be a fat bottom end in my mix. It is what it is. But it's musical. because this should be musical. And so many of you guys lose sight of that. You lose sight of the fact that we're mixing music. This is an art form. You get so focused on the technical aspects of things that you forget to be a musician. Of course, if you're not a musician, that might be a little hard for you. But I've always said being a musician has given me an advantage because I hear music and I hear music two ways. I hear it in its true state, its organic state of melody, and melodic, input and rhythm. And then I see music from a frequency standpoint. So when I combine those two things, that makes me someone who can turn sonic chaos into art. It's never my job to recreate what the band's doing on stage. It's my job to reinforce it and just put a thin layer of icing on top of it to make what they do better, to help the band in hiding the things that they don't do well and enforcing the things that they do well. And that's kind of why my phone rings all the time, is because we all know a good sound guy can take an average band and make them sound great. I hear a lot of guys say, well, all we do is make the band louder. Or when they fire up a system, they're like, well, the system's great. Is there noise coming out of the speakers? Okay, job done, job well done. I'm not that guy, man. I don't roll that way. That's not how I view what I do. There's no love in that for me. Some guys are so focused on the technical aspects of this and they're such gear junkies that it's really just it's like going to a car show where everybody's just trying to show up with the coolest ride. Some of these guys are like that. They're just trying to show up with the coolest sound system. If they got the coolest, most expensive sound system, then they're validated and everybody is oohing and ahhing over their system and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, 30 minutes later when they're mixing the band, it's horrible. Horrible. I was at a venue. I hate to keep bringing this kind of stuff up, but I got to give you real world examples. I was at a venue a few weeks ago, brand new venue, new plastic box, line array, really good consoles. They did all the work to treat the room correctly, and it was horrible. It was so bad that people, everywhere I go, people know me. So especially locally, people were coming to me wanting to know what was wrong. And of course, I'm like, I'm not working. I mean, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I can guess, I can hear, I can tell you what I hear, but I didn't put this system together. I don't know how they have it tuned. I don't know. Yeah, go ask the guy driving the rig. Go ask the sound guy. I don't know what to tell you. Another guy came up to me. He's like, man, what do you think of that vocal mix? I'm like, it's horrible. I hate to be that guy. I don't go out trying to be that guy. When I go out and I'm off, I just want to enjoy the show, man. I don't want to be distracted by someone who can't mix. Most of the time, I'll get up and leave. I came real close to that at that show. And, you can't fix stupid, And I've tried to have conversations with the owner to some degree or another, and he is adamantly convinced in his superiority, his intellectual superiority. And you know what? I'm to a point with all these kind of venues where it's not my circus, not my monkey, not my problem. I'll come and see shows that I really, really see artists I really, really want to see when you get super cool artists in. And I'll just have to tolerate whatever's in place, Now, I know venues getting it right. I can give you their names and phone numbers too. There are, venues that are getting it right. Most are not, because most are driven by budget instead of quality, And that just, it drives me nuts, man. I'm trying to just mind my own business, stay in my own lane, all that kind of stuff and everything. And, this Chinese invasion of gear has just dumbed down a whole generation of guys that don't even know how good it could be. They just don't. And it's not their fault. I'm not being super critical of them. I'm just saying it's not their fault. They don't know. What they need to do is humble themselves and listen to some of us older guys and come and work on our rigs, and then you can see just how good it can be. and don't just run after the road of least resistance. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and work hard, because that's what it takes. I hate it. I hate seeing people put their money out and then they're hitting me up with, man, I just bought this speaker box and it's not even a year old. It's already quit working. And my repair guy says that the parts aren't available, that they quit making parts for this model because they just released a new model. Now you have disposable gear, and that's kind of the world we're living in right now. And it's not just sound equipment and lighting and things like that. It's everything. I grew up in a very blue collar family. I'm 11 of 12 kids in my family, and my father was a diesel mechanic, and my mom was a homemaker and a cook. She did work part time as a cook from every now and then. And we were people to where we didn't have a lot of money, man. So if something broke, we fixed it. If your dryer broke, you pulled it out of the dryer closet and you tore it apart and you fixed it. Nowadays, we live in a society where everything is so cheaply made, you can't even get parts to fix something. So what do? You throw it away and you move on to the next thing. The only problem with this, and here is what no one has seen, and I'm going to end with this, okay? Here is what no one has realized. You paying less for a piece of equipment that only lasts 2 to 5 years is costing you more in the long run when you got to replace it every 2 to 5 years. Instead of having equipment that you buy and last at least 10 years, like the world I came from, when you bought a console or you bought speakers or amplifiers, you did that anticipating to get 10 years of service out of that. Because ROI is a real thing. Return on investment is a real thing. And if you don't keep your eyes on that, these kind of things can put you out of business. And it's why I'm still mixing on SRX 700 series stuff and EAW KF series stuff, because this stuff just lasts. I just rebuilt a couple of my JBL boxes. It's the first time they've been rebuilt in over 20 years. And I fully anticipate on getting another 20 years out of them if I live that long. I'm 53. I'm trying to get like another 15 years in this mug, and then I'm going to punch out and let you young guys take over. But yeah, man, you don't realize the reoccurring cost that's happening every time you got to throw away a piece of gear, or every time you got to set it in the shop and say, okay, well, I'll throw it down in the B or the C rig, but how often does your B or C rig go out? I have all the way down to a D rig, and they don't go out very often, a handful of times a year, something like that. Most of the time, it's my A rig or my B rig. So then you're just storing equipment that doesn't work right anymore, or you don't have confidence in it. Like, that's the thing about that X32 rack thing I was telling you about in my rehearsal space. I can't trust the thing now. So now it's no good to me. I can use it with rehearsal, so where we can stop and reboot it if we have to, and it's not the end of the world. But I would never take that out on a gig. I don't take broken gear to shows. I just don't. So I'll probably pull that file out because it has our ear mix in it and load it into one of my M32s, and that's what we'll probably use out. It's nuts, man. It's absolutely nuts. They've kind of did a bait and switch on us. They really have. And you deserve better. This is my whole point of this whole conversation. You deserve better. So at what point do we stand up, to this cheap Chinese tsunami of disposable gear and say, we demand better products? But the thing is you're going to have to be smart enough to support those products with your wallet. And it's going to hurt right out of the gate. But the long game is you save gobs and gobs and gobs of money. I regularly have followers sending me private messages now asking me where they can find JBL 700 series SRX stuff, or QRX, or JF, or KF, EAW, even some of the older Meyer boxes, and that sort of stuff. Man, you can get that stuff I've seen a pair of three-way KF 300Zs. Those are killer boxes. I mean, you can cover, they have flyware built into them. You can cover a big room with those boxes. And you can get the pair of them for like $600, $700. I seen a pair on reverb.com the other day, just like that came with an ATA travel case that you could get for like $900, a pair of them in an ATA case for $900. So tell me again why you want to go spend $1,000, $1,200 per box for plastic Tupperware boxes, point source boxes. If you're going line array, you can add another $1,000 to that. I mean, easily. You see where I'm going with that? I'm really looking out for you. I'm not trying to disagree with you. I'm trying to talk some sense into you, okay? Like, are you really so disabled at 30 years old that you and a buddy can't lift a 75-pound box up on a stick or, to stack on a sub or something like that? I know you're smart enough to be able to learn to use a system processor and buy amp. Those 300Zs have a full range option. You can just run them full range. You don't have to. You can do like I do a lot of my systems and just aux feed the subs and do a high pass filter up to like 80 hertz or something on the tops, and boom, you're good to go. It's really not that hard, especially with some of the modern amplifiers, the 4-channel amps that are out now. Sure, you pay more for the amplification than you do the box, but those amplifiers will last for 10, 15 years if you take care of them. I don't know, man. This really perplexes me. You younger guys, hit me up in the comments section. And please hear my heart of respect and admiration to you guys. I'm not attacking you. I'm saying I really wish I could take you in a time machine back to, the 80s and let you hear what these systems sounded like. And then the light would come on. You'd be like, I get it now. I get it. Like, I had no idea that it could be this good. Hit me in the comments section. Let me know how you feel about that. Some of you have mixed on some of that old gear. Some of you have worked for middle market companies that are still using the stuff like me, who are rocking out that ROI every year, still putting them boxes out yet for another season, man. They're like grandma's biscuits, man. They never disappoint. So some of you guys in that demographic have done that, and you know what I'm talking about. Please get up in the comments section and help some of these other guys who don't know that, who haven't worked on those systems. I believe we can turn this around. I know it's a long shot, and I don't have a lot of confidence that people are going to support it with their wallet because inflation's killing us all right now, and financially as a country we are struggling. But I do believe that we can do better at what we're doing. So listen, if you have made it this far in the video, like almost an hour into this video, you should be a grumpy insider. You should be on the paid side of the channel here, getting in that group of really, really cool sound engineers. This is a thing I did not see coming when I created the insiders, when I created the member side of this stuff on Facebook and on YouTube, is that I didn't put it together until after it happened and it started manifesting in front of me, was that we are drawing together some of the industry's, best middle market sound engineers, production guys, stage hands, system techs, all that stuff. A lot of older guys that have been coming from my frame of mind and have used all the equipment in the world and that kind of stuff. It has become such a resource, an educational resource. Just in that alone would be worth the $5 a month or whatever it is to be in there. I would pay it myself. I pay this on other websites or on other YouTube channels that I support. I am a member to those channels for all these same reasons. Plus, you get a deeper access into my world. I vlog over there. That is the only place that I vlog, is on the paid side on Facebook and YouTube. I also do a lot of one-on-one conversation with subscribers. When I know you're a subscriber, I genuinely try to answer the phone or answer your private message, your direct message or whatever. I will give you advice. I will help you in any way possible. If you want to hire me as a consultant to come to your church or your nightclub or something like that, I will give you discounted rates because you're a subscriber. I will just bend over backwards. I'm really a guy that's all about getting the most bang for your buck. That's what this whole video has been about. I practice what I preach. So we've tried to give you maximum amount of content A lot of other channels will do like a little 10-minute member video every week, and that's kind of all you get. Maybe once a month they'll do a long form or something. Not me. I post a long form video, at least one every week on the member side for the Grumpy Insiders. And I'm also posting about every other day. Hey man, what do you guys think about this? We post gig pictures every Monday. Let's post our gig pictures from this past weekend. Let's post video clips. Let's talk about each other's mixes and things like. It's just a fun place to be for people in the business. You don't even have to be a sound guy to really enjoy it, honestly. We have a handful of musicians over there as well. So get in that group, man. The link is in the description. It says, be a Grumpy Sound Guy Insider, and hit that link and get into the inner circle of my content. I love you guys. I appreciate you. I'll see you next week.